All right, got asked a question about discipline, and I want to talk about discipline. It was more of a comment that somehow what I've done and the way that I did it, eating 1,750 calories a day, going to the gym every day, walking the way that I did, that somehow that makes me special. That makes me extraordinary. So I thought I'd take a minute to explain to everyone where the push came for me and why in such a short amount of time, 22 months, I've lost 90 plus pounds. I've put on 20 plus pounds of muscle. I'm in the greatest shape of my life at 54 years old, coming up on 55 in a couple of months. I was laying in the hospital bed in November of 21. I was down 4 pints of blood as I had lost a bunch of blood, had taken myself to the hospital, immediately admitted within 24 minutes of hitting the emergency room, and had begun a 3-day process of transfusing blood to bring my number back up to where it needed to be. I was laying there at 303 pounds. I had been addicted to opioids 3 times. I couldn't climb up more than 6 or 8 stairs without stopping and catching my breath, both because I was fat and because I had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in my heart, which caused AFib. My heart would race up, would race down. I was taking meds to slow everything down, taking meds for blood pressure, taking meds to stop my heart from going too fast. I was taking meds coming and going. I was a mess. I was dying. Outside forces on me from work and business and other things were just crushing, come off of COVID. And I was in about the best or the worst shape I had ever been in my life. And I had an epiphany, and here's what it was. Is I wanted to see my grandchildren that are unborn graduate from college. And how could I do that? It means I figured I needed 30 years. So how can I get 30 years? What do I need to do? That was number one. I grew up without grandparents. I wasn't going to grow up or have my children's children grow up without a grandparent if I had anything to do with it, if it was up to me. I also had this epiphany that I was being selfish, that I had worked so hard to raise my children the way that I did, to make sure that they had a better life than I had growing up, to make sure they had opportunities and that they were educated and graduated and do all of the things that are important. And I did all of that. And then I thought to myself, upon doing that, I fell apart. And here I was, 303 pounds, dying. And dying because I was selfishly feeding myself and too lazy to do what I was supposed to do, and crying about woe is me, and worrying about things, that letting things bother me more than I should, losing sight of the important things in life. So I decided to make a change. And I decided to take responsibility for it. I decided to stop being the stubborn, Twinkie eating person that I was, stuffing my face with poisons that were stealing time from my children. And not only stealing time from my children, but also, and this is probably more important, having just buried my in-laws who had died in hospice in my house, both of them over the previous 3 years, that I would inflict upon them a greater chance of having to take care of me as I slowly deteriorated, having abused my body by eating those poisons that would deteriorate me to the point and disease me to the point where I was catatonic, falling apart, limbs being cut off, diabetes, all of the things that go along, cancers, opening myself to all of these risks that would then inflict upon my children the anguish of having to take care of me. And for so many, having to take care of me for a long time. There's no guarantee that that's not going to happen to me anyway. But with the change in diet that I've done, and with the exercise regimen I've put together, and with the muscle that I have added, and the fat that I have lost and continue to lose, I have turned those odds in my favor. I no longer take hardly any medication whatsoever. I've cut it in half 3 times in the last now 22 months. And better than that, I've gotten rid of one med about 5 months ago that was slowly eating my liver, but was the only one that would stop my heart from beating 150 beats a minute. And so, frankly, I didn't feel like a man. I felt like a husk, like a shell of my former self, my aggressive, entrepreneurial, business owning, buying and selling, winning and losing, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, aggressive self that I had known so well, the competitive person that hated to lose but was not unreasonable when he did. The measured person that I was missing. It was gone and replaced by something that I didn't realize and I didn't understand and I didn't recognize. And so laying there in that bed in November of 21, prior to Thanksgiving, I had that epiphany that said, you are either going to live or you're going to die. And I decided to live, and I decided to live for what I believe the right reasons. I decided to live for myself. I decided to live to be an example to my children and my grandchildren. I decided to live and give up being selfish and feeding myself things that were stealing time from my children and grandchildren, stealing from them. And not only that, I decided to stop and reduce the risk significantly. That great anguish and stress and sadness that was going to end up being me at the end of my life and that would be inflicted upon my children. The least I could do to try to mitigate that risk to the greatest extent possible was this journey that I came on that I've come on over the last 22 months. One that returned me to the aggressive person that I was, to the sharp, quick, never tired, full of energy, boundless energy. The go-getter that I was, that I now recognize, that is able to do things in a way that I never imagined 22 months ago. All from that epiphany, I decided that it was time for me to live, and to live for myself, and more importantly, to live for others, and to be the man that I wanted to be and that I hoped I was being the example to for my children and ultimately for my grandchildren. I sit in front of you today, largely having completed that task, and now am in a maintenance mode and do not anticipate as I come up on my 2-year anniversary going backwards. I'm not special. There's no special discipline. I just decided that instead of being selfish and feeding myself the things that were going to kill me and inflict all of those things that I just described on my children, I would give up those things so that 5, 10, 15 years down the line, as I continue to be healthy and I continue to thrive, I can point back to that day in that hospital bed in November of 21 and say that was the turning point, and that's why I'm not only still here, but I'm healthy and I'm thriving. And ultimately, somewhere around 75 years old, I'll watch one of my first grandchildren graduate from college, and I'll look back on November 21 and say, job well done. The example you set is the one that you hope your children then set for their own children. And I think that is the epitome of what being a father and what being a man is. I'm a better father, I'm a better husband, I'm a better man. I'm spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, incredibly, unmeasurably stronger in every way than I was when I was dying 2 years ago. Opportunities are everywhere. You gotta go get them. Stop making excuses. Stop living for yourself and start living for others. Go for a walk.